Cherish, if you're not speaking, can you please mute the phone? Thank you. On behalf of IIT Roorkee Alumni Association of North America, I'm honored by your presence to celebrate life and cherish the memory of Professor S.K. Joshi. To open the meeting, I request Professor Atma Sahu, past president of IITRAANA and president of IIT Roorkee Foundation, to open this memorial. Professor Sahu had the privilege of having Professor Joshi as a colleague, personal friend, and guide. Professor Sahu, sir.
Thank you very much, Anu. For to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord Krishna. As we all know, Professor S.K. Joshi passed away about 3 weeks ago on Friday, May 15th. His soul may rest in peace. For 86 unshakable years, he nurtured people around the world. With a broken heart, I offered my deepest sympathy to his wife, respected Mrs. Hema Joshi, his brother, his son Sanjay, and his wife, and love to two charming grandchildren, and Parmar, for putting together this event so promptly. I thank Anup Verma, President, IIT Roorkee Alumni Association, North America, as well as he is also a board member of Penn IT. Also acknowledge Dr. from DC, Virginia, Mr. Manish Saraf and Mr. Neeraj Gupta, a great Roorkee team. Just about me, I was born and raised in Roorkee and earned doctorate in 1973 from Roorkee. In Maryland, I've been about 40 years. Few words to invite and receive Director IIT Roorkee, Dr. Ajit Kumar Chaturvedi, a great distinguished teacher, researcher, and a true intellectual. Please, if you don't mind, no clapping. After earning his BTech, MTech, PhD in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur, Dr. Chaturvedi served at IIT BHU and later joined as a faculty in the Department of Electronics, Computers Engineering at IIT Roorkee. Afterward, he was gone to IIT Kanpur, serving from HOD to director, deputy director, and received several awards, teaching as well as research. His research work is in the areas of communication theory and wireless communication, and produced several doctors and graduate students. Published in various IEEE publications, linking research with numerous projects for BSNL, ITK telecom industry. Without further delay, now we have a founding member of Telecom Standards Development Society of India and IIT Roorkee Director, Dr. Ajit Chaturvedi.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu, for your very kind words. And let me start by profusely thanking Shri Anup Verma for having taken this initiative and following it up in a very diligent manner so that all of us could correct at a convenient time and pay our respect and share our fond memories regarding someone whom we all look up to, or someone who has been an inspiration for a lot of Indians, and especially those who have studied at University of Roorkee. That is Professor S.K. Joshi. We all know that Professor S.K. Joshi has a very outstanding career, both as a student as well as beyond, and he followed it up with the role of an institution builder at the national level. For almost 20 years, he was involved with the University of Roorkee, and he is known as a very remarkable teacher, with a capable person, able leader, and a very accomplished researcher. In fact, people of Turkey feel proud of multiple things that he achieved at Turkey. One of that was that having studied at an Indian institution and coming back to University of Roorkee, I mean for his doctorate and for his higher studies, and he could do world-class research sitting in University of Roorkee. Of course, in the 1950s and 60s, and sometimes even in early 70s, University of Roorkee was the leading light, the star of the country, and there were many persons who were doing wonderful academics and research at the national level when other institutions were just coming up or they were not there. And Dr. S.K. Joshi was definitely in the very top bracket there. Although I must say it is my misfortune that I never had the opportunity to personally meet Professor S.K. Joshi. But I have been hearing his name for maybe close to 35 years. I don't remember exactly when was the first time I heard this name. But this name sounds so familiar as if I have met him several times. But despite my earlier stint at University of Roorkee as a lecturer and an assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering during 96 to 98, and later after I joined here, I really feel unfortunate that I could never have the chance to personally meet Professor S.K. Joshi. That is a big loss for me. But at the institute level, I must share with all of you that the Department of Physics feels deeply indebted to him. There are several faculty members who feel that his contributions to the department need to be recognized. And with that thing in mind, there are some initiatives that are taking place. In fact, we have a very strong hope that something tangible will come in the very near future. When it comes, I'll definitely share with the entire community. At this point, we only want to say that we deeply feel we are very desirous of doing something very noticeable, something that is befitting the memory of somebody as high a stature as Professor S.K. Joshi. And when I shared this news with at the institute level, when I first got the news that Professor S.K. Joshi has passed away, I was initially thinking that maybe because it was a long time back when he was in the institute, 35 years back, he was in the institute. So maybe not many people would be familiar and we'll have to tell them. But I was pleasantly surprised that there was a very sort of a spontaneous and very, as if he touched the lives of so many people, response that everybody felt very, as if they had a personal loss. So that showed the stature and the kind of personality that Professor S.K. Joshi had, and the kind of contributions he did for University of Roorkee. And later, in case some of you are not aware, he was also the first chairman board of governors when University of Roorkee became IIT Roorkee. So with these words, I would like to conclude. I know a lot of other people have to speak. Otherwise, I can continue for long. And let me conclude by paying my very heartful respect and display my, in his memory, we would do something very noticeable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi. Thank you for your words. Now we will have Professor Harpreet Singh share his memories of Professor Joshi. Professor Harpreet Singh is an old-time colleague of Professor Joshi.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the honor to be a part of this homage-paying ceremony to one of the greatest faculty members the Roorkee ever had, Professor S.K. Joshi. I was at Roorkee from 1963 to 1981. I was lecturer in 1966. I recall when Dr. Joshi came to Johar Bhavan Mess at the invitation of some of the students to have a dinner. That's the first time I saw him from a distance. The remark by his students was that we are having a famous professor. That's how I knew Professor Joshi. As a colleague in the sister department, I have been meeting Dr. Joshi off and on my way from DS Barracks to electronics department. I do recall that his office was on the second floor of physics department, of the math and physics department. And whenever I went to his office, he welcomed me and with a warmth and affection. I do recall that because of Dr. Joshi's famous work, he was known even then in all over India, and he arranged a meeting of Atomic Energy Commission people. About 250 persons came from, I think, from Bombay, and the function was held in a CBR auditorium because we did not have any space at Roorkee to have such a function. I was asked to produce a qawwali just to entertain the guests, and I do remember that one of the words was, "Itne bade gumbaj mein ek chota sa reactor dekhenge." I mean, that shows how popular Dr. Joshi was even then in 60s, early 70s in Atomic Energy Commission and so in physics. I do remember Dr. Joshi in syndicate meetings. He usually sat in the front row and right on the right hand side of the Vice Chancellor. He spoke little, but whenever he spoke, his words were highly appreciated and they were listened and generally agreed to by audience. That was the type of the command Dr. Joshi had. I also remember I met Dr. Joshi and the family, I think in 80s when I came from United States, and I was at the house of Dr. Nanda, and in the morning, Dr. Joshi was outside his house in Vikas Nagar. He immediately invited me, and we had a cup of tea and remembered very, very old and past things about Roorkee. Please show that picture to me, Anup, which I shared. You were just sharing a picture, which, yeah, this is the picture on 8th June 1981 at my marriage reception. And this picture has Dr. Joshi, Dr. Jai Krishna, and Dr. Jadishna. While I was showing this picture to some friend at Roorkee here, I told the friend that it is a very rare picture where two vice chancellors of Roorkee University are together. And the friend remarked, "No, two. The third is also not only vice chancellor, but he is vice chancellor, the vice chancellor." That is the time when I think Dr. Joshi had become director of NPL. Later, he became a director of CSR, and he had Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan, which, into the best of my memory, no faculty member in Roorkee, from Roorkee had ever had. It is the greatest honor we feel that Dr. Joshi brought to Roorkee. At the end, I'm not a poet, but I do write sometimes some lines which always come from my heart. And here I have written a few lines only 2 days ago. They are, "Le ja meri duaएं, le ja meri duaएं, le ja meri duaएं, le ja meri duaएं. कोई देव बन के आया, कोई देव बन के आया, आके दिया जलाया, इस दीप की चमक ने रुड़की को जगमगाया। आया कोई बन के माली, आया कोई बन के माली, एक गुलिस्तां लगाने, तेरे खिले चमन ने दुनिया को खिलखिलाया, तेरे खिले चमन ने दुनिया को खिलखिलाया। तेरी ही याद गाकर, तेरी ही याद गाकर दुनिया को हम सुनाएं, ले जा मेरी दुआएं, ले जा मेरी दुआएं, ले जा मेरी दुआएं, ले जा मेरी दुआएं। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Professor Singh. Thank you, Professor Sahu, Director Chaturvedi, Professor Singh. We're also privileged today to have Mr. Anand Prakash, one of our senior most alumni in North America. He's a 57 graduate of University of Roorkee. I request him to share his personal reflections of Professor Joshi now.
This is a respectful Shraddhanjali to Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan Dr. S.K. Joshi. It is so sad we have lost Dr. Joshi from our midst. It is an irretrievable loss to his family, friends, and all of us who had been closely or even remotely associated with him. I wish and pray to God to bestow sufficient emotional strength upon his son and all surviving members of his family to bear this tragic loss, and offer my heartfelt condolences to them. My contact with Dr. Joshi was in my capacity as executive engineer, responsible for developments related to buildings and laboratories in his department, and to a limited extent in his own on-campus accommodation. I had the honor to have interacted with him during his tenure as head of physics department at the University of Roorkee from 1967 to 1971. Much has since been hazed in the oblivion of more than 5 decades. Yet, as far as I recall, he joined UOR a few months after I had come there on a humble assignment on deputation in the civil engineering department. My first meeting with him was at his residence at Malakpur Road in connection with some structural work desired by him. He was an imitable personification of humility with dignity, very humble, personable, and amicable. During this meeting, he never ever mentioned he had joined UOR as professor and head. He was one of the most distinguished and accomplished scientists on campus at that time. Through my contacts with the faculty of physics department, such as Dr. B.P. Singh, Dr. Yogeshwar Singh, Dr. B.M.S. Kashyap, Dr. Varshni, and others, I learned that it was an honor for UOR to have someone of his stature as head of an expanding physics department. He was very respectful and supportive of his faculty. During my meetings with him, he always had the concerned professors with him. Sometimes it was Dr. B.P. Singh, who happened to be my neighbor at that time. Later on, Dr. Kashyap, who is no more with us, became a very close friend of ours, and he was a student as colleague also of Dr. Kashyap, Dr. Joshi. He informed us about Dr. Joshi's outstanding contributions to physics in his leading capacities at NPL, CSIR, and other high-level scientific institutions, and the numerous well-deserved awards and honors conferred upon him by the central government and other prestigious scientific entities. Personalities of Dr. Joshi's eminence have their names permanently imprinted in the annals of science and would never be forgotten. We are sure his son will follow Dr. Joshi's footsteps and move on like father, like son. Now, Shradev Joshi ji, तुमको अर्पित है यह पुष्पांजलि, तुम्हें समर्पित ये श्रद्धांजलि, तुमको प्राप्त हो पूर्ण शांति, उपलब्ध तुम्हें हो परम धाम, हे पुण्यात्मा तुम्हें प्रणाम, तुम्हें दिवंगत नमन प्रणाम. May God give eternal peace to the departing noble soul. Respectfully, Anand Prakash. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This is truly humbling to be in presence of such alumni, but I'm also honored to be one of the few who are privileged to be Dr. Joshi's students. We feel his loss personally. In such a time, there is no one who feels his loss more than his son. Professor Joshi's son, Sanjay Joshi, he himself is a Thomsonian. He graduated in 1989 computer science. He currently works at Google. We are truly grateful for him joining us today. Mr. Sanjay Joshi.
Thank you, Anup, for inviting me today to talk about my father. Thank you also to all the speakers from my family for your kind words about my father. And thanks finally to also the board of directors of IIT Roorkee Foundation for initiating the idea of establishing a memorial fund on behalf of my father at IIT Roorkee. Today I'll try to give you a rough outline of my father's life story. And this narrative is based on how I experienced life with him and the stories I heard about him from my from others in my family. I hope what I say today inspires all of us to strive harder in our areas of interest. My father, Sri Krishna, was the oldest son of Pandit Jogaram Joshi and Srimati Parvati Joshi. So Pandit Jogaram Joshi is my Bubuji or grandfather, and Parvati Joshi is my Ama or grandmother. Sri Krishna grew up in a small village called Anarpa, which is located in Uttarakhand, deep in the Himalayan hills. So this photo is that of our ancestral home at Anarpa. My grandfather was first in his family to receive formal education. After completing his basic studies, he became a school teacher. In those days, school teacher salary, it's still not great, but it was even worse then. And the family was poor, conditions were difficult. In August 2019, my father narrated some of his childhood struggles to my daughter Suchita. So here Suchita is being fed mango by her Bubuji and Amaji. And my father is talking about those old days and he mentioned that his school at Anarpa, his village at Anarpa had no schools nearby. So they would, my grandfather and my father's younger brother, and he used to leave their village every weekend, and they would start around 3 a.m. in the morning so that they can spend the next week at the school in the next village. So they would walk 20 miles during the night, starting at 3 a.m. Each of them carrying a load of around 20 kilos worth of provisions and books. So provisions that would last them for 1 week on their backs. And they would carry this heavy load. They would walk through steep mountain passes in dark. These mountain passes, he mentioned, were filled with bears and mountain lions. And they had to feel their way through these steep passes in the dark of the night so they could reach the school in the morning and start school on Monday. To make things even more difficult for the family, my grandfather died in an accident in 1945. So Sri Krishna was a young boy of 11 years old at that time. So in addition to doing well in his studies, my father also became responsible for his family at this young age. He gave tuitions to other children in order to make a living. Later in high school, through his hard work and brilliance, he secured high marks and was ranked first in the district of Almora. I believe my father shares this story of rising from nothing with many other remarkable people who grew up during the time when India gained independence. And many of us who are here today, the next generation, are here mainly because we are fortunate to benefit from their hard work. So after high school, my father gained admission to the BSc program at Allahabad University. Allahabad University in those days was a premier research university in India. The physics department there had been set up under the guidance of Albert Einstein and Arthur Eddington, a famous astronomer. The first professor and head of the department at Allahabad was Professor Meghnad Saha. And after Professor Saha left for Kolkata, Erwin Schrödinger was planning to come and replace him, but he could not come to India as a result of World War II and had to settle in Ireland. So such was the reputation and quality of Allahabad University physics department at that time. So when my father left Almora for Allahabad, he boarded a train for the first time in his life. So this is slightly older when he was around in his 20s, but you can imagine him being a younger person. And when he left from Haldwani to Allahabad, Sri Krishna was on the train. He was thirsty, not knowing much about how trains worked. He stepped off that train to drink some water at one of the stations. He did not know that the train stop was a quick one, and the train pulled away while he was drinking water at that station. He lost all his belongings, all his savings, his high school certificates, his university admission form. So how this young boy reacted to that situation illustrates his never give up attitude. He found a train to Allahabad, remembered the address of a familiar person in Allahabad, and with their help and generosity was able to join the BSc program. While at Allahabad, he had limited means and continued to teach tuition to other students to make a living. He rented an inexpensive room, which he shared with other people. It was a noisy place, so it was difficult for him to study. Every night, he would move a small desk under a street light and studied in the quiet street throughout the night. On one such night, a gentleman found him and asked him what was he doing. So Sri Krishna told him why he was studying in the street. This person was Dr. Rajendra Singh, a former student of Professor C.V. Raman and himself a professor of physics at Allahabad. Impressed with my father's determination, Professor Singh, or Raju Bhaiya, as everyone called him, paid special attention to my father after that and treated my father like a younger brother throughout his life. When my father departed Allahabad University for California in 1965, Raju Bhaiya was assured that Sri Krishna was well situated, so he chose to leave that time to leave physics and the department and pursued his political interest full time after that. He passed away in 2003. In 2019, my father was invited to inaugurate a building at the Professor Rajendra Singh Institute of Physical Sciences at the Veer Bahadur Purvanchal University at Jaunpur. So continuing his illustrious career, my father topped the MSc program at Allahabad University in 1957, and as was the tradition at that time, was awarded the gold medal and also a full-time position as a lecturer in physics department. He started conducting his research while he was doing his MSc and started guiding research of other students at that time. So as a result, before he obtained his own PhDs, one of his students was awarded a PhD under his guidance. Since several other students were in the pipeline to get their PhDs under him, he was asked to get by the physics department to start his own PhD research. So he completed his PhD at Allahabad University under Professor Kedareshwar Banerjee, who was also Professor Raman's student and one of the top experimental physicists in X-ray crystallography. My father started as an experimental physicist, but he had to work fair bit on the theory of lattice vibrations while doing this experimental work on his thesis. And once his thesis was complete, he switched completely to the theory of condensed matter. At Allahabad, my father also came in touch with some eminent physicists. As some of you might know, Professor Raja Ramanna nurtured India's atomic energy program after Dr. Homi Bhabha. One day, late at night, during a holiday, Dr. Ramanna was walking through the physics department at Allahabad. He found a young man working alone in the physics department. And Dr. Ramanna started discussing physics with this young man and liked his dedication, liked his personality. And later this relationship helped foster my father's and his group's long-term collaboration with Department of Atomic Energy that Dr. Harpreet Singh recently alluded to. And he also worked with the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. And my father continued this habit of working hard at Roorkee. We lived in Vikas Nagar, and we would see him walk in from the physics department at around 2 in the morning. And then he would start walking back again to the department at around 7 in the morning. And his students would find him back at around 7:30 again. And I think he made this habit of walking. So he enjoyed walking, and that's something he did throughout his life. And one of the things I would like to highlight is the type of relationship my father had with his students. He was not only their teacher, a guru, but also like an elder brother to them. So all his students called him Bhai Saab, and others called him Joshi ji, and my mother was Bhabhi ji to all of them. Several of these research students lived with our family and frequently ate with our family. I remember that our home at Roorkee always had visiting researchers from across the world. And my father was generous to everyone. He would say namaste on his own to all university employees, whether they were senior professors or class C and D employees who worked in the department. His former students and colleagues recently met online, and I heard their YouTube video, and this is a screenshot from that video. So they still adore him, not only for his excellence and his achievements, but also for his generosity, how he inspired them. To do great work through his wisdom and by setting good examples. At Roorkee, my father set up a capable condensed matter theory research group that was known internationally for the quality of their research output. And as a child, I remember reading letters to my father from several physicists, including luminaries like S. Chandrasekhar, Abdus Salam, T.D. Lee, and von Klitzing. Besides research, my father also liked to share knowledge with other physicists through seminars and symposium that he gave across the world. At Roorkee, he made time to teach physics to undergraduate students. I remember when I was in high school, he would gather a stack of several physics books, and I would see these books spread out across our dining table, because that was the largest table available in our house, and writing introductory physics letters for the first year BTech students. I think the last batch that was taught by him was the electrical engineering batch that included Anup and Ashutosh. And when I reflect on my interaction with my father, I remember two key things about him. One is that he was steeped in physics, or as his physics students said, he lived physics. But he also had an intense curiosity about all areas of science. The reason I got introduced to computer science is due to him. He introduced me to Mandelbrot set, which you see here, through an article in Scientific American. And these sets are beautiful math structures that are one of the large set of similar structures called fractals. And similarly, around mid-1980s, he shared articles about neural networks such as Hopfield net and backpropagation with me. And he had this broad interest across all areas. Like, he would read Nature for articles in biology, chemistry, and this broad interest also helped him later in his general scientific management and institution building career. The second thing he emphasized was the pursuit of excellence, and that requires unrelenting dedication and hard work. So he nudged us to work hard through gentle encouragement. I especially remember two Sanskrit shlok he used to often say to me, and carrying on the family tradition, I now torture my kids with the same. So I'll share both of them with you. I think the first one probably many of you might already know, and it goes as this. Kaak chesh. So this is basically what an ideal scholar or a student should be. So Kaak cheshta vakodhyanam shwan nidra tathavacha alpahari grahatyagi vidyarthi panchalakshanam. So this shlok roughly translates to a student should have these 5 qualities. First is a desire for knowledge, like the proverbial crow who fetched rocks to fill a half-filled pot of water. Similarly, a student or a scholar should seek knowledge even when he has limited means. Second is an ability to concentrate on his work for a long time, similar to a crane who has the single-minded ability to focus and be able to patiently wait for the fish. Third is similar to a dog be able to wake up after sleeping and be able to get back to his work. Fourth is eat less. And fifth is be willing to leave home to pursue knowledge. He also liked to say a less well-known shlok from Hitopdesh, which which he used whenever he wanted to express his disapproval to what I or others at home were doing, and we were not living up to his expectations. So his disapproval was expressed indirectly and usually with a smile. So this shlok from Hitopdesh has basically a father talking to his son. So this goes, this shlok says, Ha ha putraka nadhitam sugatay tasu ratrishu ten tvam vidusham madhye panke gauri vasidasi. So the meaning of this shlok is, alas, my son, who you have who pass the long nights frivolously, it is now too late for you to lament. Today, in the midst of these wise men, you stand despondent like a cow stuck in a quagmire. So, so fortunately, things did not turn out as badly for me as the concerns expressed in this shlok. But it's a good reminder, at least, to always strive harder. Later, when I entered the BTech program at University of Roorkee, my father moved to NPL, National Physical Lab, as its director. NPL was set up by Dr. K.S. Krishnan, who was both Professor C.V. Raman's student and also a former physics professor at Allahabad. So next slide should have the photo of Dr. Krishnan. And there are around 40 such labs across India, CBRI being at Roorkee being one of them. All these labs come under the aegis of CSIR. After NPL, my father was selected to lead CSIR as its Director General. He advised the Minister of Science and Technology of India in that role. He had to frequently go to the Parliament to also answer questions when Member of Parliament used to raise questions. And he did develop a great amount of respect for our members of Parliament, although like they don't, and respect because like how much effort they put in to understand the issues and raise very relevant questions. So, which is quite different from what we generally hear about politicians. I mean, they do have issues, but Indian politicians, especially member of parliaments, are quite capable and generally very concerned about how the government is performing. After CSIR, while he was at CSIR, my father was also elected the president of Indian National Science Academy, or INSA. INSA is the premier science body similar to the US National Academy of Sciences or the British Royal Society. Some of its past presidents have included other eminent scientists like Professor Meghnad Saha, Homi Bhabha, S.N. Bose, P.C. Mahalanobis, and Raja Ramanna. So to be selected and regarded highly by other peers, he considered this a high honor. After he passed away, recently several of the former presidents of INSA and other INSA fellows remembered him. The key thing take away from this online recollection that people had was his ability to move across various subjects of science with ease, and to do so while bringing everyone along with him, with his kindness, with his honesty, and with his rationality. After CSIR, my father worked at DRDO, where he worked closely with Dr. APJ Kalam. So it was an interesting coincidence that my father received his Padma Bhushan from Dr. Kalam in 2003, when Dr. Kalam was the president of India. After the Padma award ceremony, our family had a brief opportunity to talk to Kalam Sahab at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. After formally retiring, my father continued his physics research at NPL, and he continued publishing in top journals like Physical Review, and at the same time was advising scientific institutions in India. In some ways, he never retired until it became physically impossible for him to work due to his illness. While I was growing up in Roorkee, I knew there were several other illustrious professors, and some of them are people I knew, such as Dr. A.S. Arya, Dr. D.V. Singh, and Dr. V.K. Gaur. This is really a short, very, very short list, and I'm sure I'm missing many, many names. These professors, similar to my father, conducted impactful research while they were at Roorkee, and many of them were recognized for the research work they did at Roorkee through national awards such as Bhatnagar Award, and they later went on to take positions of responsibility outside Roorkee also. I think one way we could honor my father's legacy would be to set up a fund that allows IIT Roorkee to host researchers of highest caliber. As I conclude, I would like to leave you with this photo of my father with my two kids. This photo was taken on the morning of August 3rd, 2019, less than just probably around 9 months ago. My father loved to walk, and then he loved to walk in nature and in greenery. And at age 85, he was still a very strong hiker. That day, he took us on a brisk walk of around 6 miles and jogged most of the way with us. To us, he seemed so strong and so full of energy that he could easily have lasted for 20 more years. Yet roughly 9 months later, he's gone because of colon cancer. The stage 4 colon cancer that took him away from us was completely treatable if it had been detected early. So once this COVID situation goes away, I urge all of you to please get a colonoscopy for anyone every 10 years for anyone in your family who's over 50 years. Similarly, please get a lipid profile. All of us, especially who are South Asians, are at the highest risk of getting cardiovascular disease at a much younger age than other population. Please get a regular physical exam from your doctor, and similarly, women should get regular exams from their OBGYN. Men over 50 should get a PSA test. And for people over 65, there are 2 pneumonia vaccines that are recommended. And I was once talking to Dr. Larry Brilliant, who knows a fair bit about epidemics. And he said that most elderly patients perish in influenza epidemics. Right now, we are having a coronavirus epidemic, but influenza epidemic will happen sometime. And most people die due to secondary bacterial infections after the initial viral infection. And these 2 vaccines are available and are highly recommended for people over 65. So if there's one thing I would like you to take away from my talk, it is that most health issues, if detected early, can be treated with modern medication. And please get regular exams. Please take care of yourself. That way, all of us will get to spend more time with our loved ones. Thank you again. For giving this opportunity to remember my father. Thanks, Anup.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Joshi. We are truly thankful to you for your thoughtful sharing of your father's life. As you mentioned, as another of his students, I was one of the students of his last batch that he taught at Rookie. And some of his old students of my batchmate, we were exchanging emails. And when Hemant Pant, he's also on the call, when he heard about Professor Joshi, he said, truly a giant with enormous humility. We were truly blessed to know Professor Joshi. Hemant also interacted with him on some of the Kumaoni events that were held there. So thank you again for taking the time and joining us today. Now I request Professor Gurjar, Dean of Resource and Alumni Affairs, IIT Roorkee, to share Institute's efforts to memorialize Professor Joshi. Professor Gurjar.
Thank you for this great opportunity to be among you, to remember Professor Joshi, and it was so inspiring to hear his life story. It is so touching and very highly motivating. Recently, we got an opportunity to interact with the IIT Roorkee Foundation board members and Mr. Joshi, his son, and in his memory, they are establishing a chair in the IIT Roorkee. As you know, to cherish or carry on the values of a person, to make it immortal, I believe that we should practice those values which a person has practiced throughout the life. So his contribution to the education, to the science, to the field of technology, physics, it would be a befitting project if we establish a chair in IIT Roorkee in his name. And I really appreciate that effort being carried by his admirers and his son. So thank you very much, and I pray to Almighty that his soul gets unified with this, the supreme consciousness, as we believe in our traditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Gurjar. Really appreciate this. Mr. Ashutosh Malviya, 1987 graduate of Roorkee, one of Professor Joshi's students, and I'm privileged to call him my batchmate too. We were in the same class together when Professor Joshi taught us physics. I request him to share some memories on behalf of our batch, please.
Thank you, Anup. Yep. Thank you, Anup, and thanks for this opportunity. And dear Roorkee alumni and friends, on behalf of my class and other students, I would like to pay a heartfelt tribute to our awesome physics teacher, Professor S.K. Joshi. He was a great scientist and, more importantly, a mentor and a role model for all of us, as Sanjay pointed out. We, the 1987 class of electrical engineering, were really very fortunate to have Professor Joshi teach us Introduction to Quantum Physics and other courses during our bachelor's in Roorkee. And I came to know today that that was the last time he taught to electrical engineers in Roorkee. Professor Joshi was a phenomenal teacher, but what was greater than his teaching was that he cared for all of us. Most of us remember being invited to his office to discuss physics and tough adjustments to college and hostel life and other things. We felt really open with him. This is a time when when the concept of office hours did not exist in Roorkee. I still do not know if Schrodinger's cat lives or dies, but I do remember trying hard at that time to understand that, because I did not want to disappoint Dr. Joshi. Later, I happened to be in touch with him when he was the head of NPL and CSIR. I was a scientist in Germany during that time, and we were setting up a collaboration project between Fraunhofer Institute and CSIR. I will never forget a lunch meeting with him in Bonn. He did not eat any food or water because he was fasting, but yet insisted that I had my lunch. To my surprise, he remembered me and others from our batch and inquired about them. He was very helpful in streamlining the administrative matters of the project and also guiding me for what I should pursue in my research and the application. I was amazed by his discipline and sharp thinking on the matters of different kinds. He was an accomplished educator, scientist, and administrator, yet a very humble person at his core. May Professor Joshi's noble soul rest in peace. Thanks, Anup, for organizing this tribute, and my condolences to Sanjay and other family members, and to the rest of the Roorkee alumni. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Mr. Shivaji Samdarshi, he's a 1980 graduate of Roorkee, a batchmate of Sanjay. He had long interaction with Professor Joshi. I request him to share some of his memories of Professor Joshi now.
So thanks, Anup. And not just with, I speak not just as an alumni of Roorkee, as a friend of Sanjay, his classmate, but also someone who had the privilege of meeting Dr. Joshi and his family, and knowing them very closely. So I really thank you for the honor and the opportunity to speak in remembrance of one of the great men of Indian science, Dr. S.K. Joshi today. What I can say is, you know, you meet a lot of people in life and some of them strike you as truly genuine and you just know it. You don't have to know about their accomplishments. You just know that they're really genuine. He was so humble and simple that you would have never guessed that you were in the presence of greatness. He never made you feel small. He always made you feel the center of attention. But at the same time, you knew that you were in the presence of someone who was great, who had served science and through science, his nation. And clearly what all of these things that Sanjay summarized today, we've seen glimpses of that. Today we got to see the whole picture. Even that does not do justice to the work that Dr. S.K. Joshi did over his lifetime. Since I found out about his passing, I've been thinking about him, and my earliest memories of him, both as a professor, as the head of Department of Physics at Roorkee, but also as my friend's dad. Sanjay and I were classmates in computer science at Roorkee, and that's how I came to know Dr. Joshi and Mrs. Joshi. They are simply uncle and auntie to me. Over these years of knowing them, I have been the recipient of their many kindness and encouragement. Sanjay's house in Roorkee was home away from home for many of us. Many of us, we would, after finishing classes, we would bike down to his house and we'd always be welcomed by his mom with kind words and most importantly, food for us, right? That was so important that time. The times that we would meet Dr. Joshi at home, he'd always ask us about how we were doing in our classes. He'd never talk down to us. He'd always be concerned. And in particular, he of course wanted to know how we were doing in physics. For me, that was great. I loved physics and dreamt of studying physics in college and beyond, but like many of us, chose the easy route and decided to study engineering. Even though Dr. Joshi did not teach us because of university rules at that time, because of conflict of interest, but he kept on an eye on all of us, how we were doing. And it shows you the concern. He would often tell Sanjay, oh, Shivaji acha kar raha hai physics mein. And when I would hear that, that would just make me so happy. Because, you know, here was someone.
Later, 1 hour.
I'm sorry. So,
can you mute if you're not speaking?
So that would make me so happy that someone who was so important, had so many engagements, and yet he cared about individuals and would make sure that he checked. And I can tell you that is my fondest memory of getting this compliment from him that I was doing well in physics. And I can tell you I truly loved physics. So that was great for me. His reputation at Roorkee was already stellar, you know, and we used to read his citations of his work in books. And so that was already well established, but his achievements were already well established. But once he moved to Delhi as the director of NPL is when we realized how truly lucky we had been to have had someone of his caliber as a faculty member. Now the story beyond that Sanjay has already told you, is one for the history books. After Dr. Joshi became the Director General of CSIR and then was awarded Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan for his contributions to science in India. What is amazing to me, though, is in all of this, he remained a very grounded man. He never talked about his achievements. I cannot remember once even him referring to anyone great that he had ever met or his work. His work spoke for itself. That's how I think about this. Now, in this moment of great sadness for all of us, my heart goes out to Auntie, to Sanjay, and the entire family. It has been such a privilege and blessing for me to know and be touched by such a wonderful man and his family. And here is just an anecdote for you that I should tell you about Dr. Joshi's heart and the heart of the family. I called Auntie in Delhi last Sunday to offer my condolences. She was very sad, and mentioned feeling his absence, mentioned feeling Uncle's absence every single moment. But you know, in the very next moment, she started inquiring about my wife by name, which she remembered after all these years, my parents, my children. And for me, this is really the hallmark of great people. It's their humanity and not their achievements that deeply touch you. And Dr. Joshi and his family represent that. I will always remember their kindness and love, and he'll be forever missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shivaji Samdarshi, for sharing that. Like I think I'm hearing from Ashutosh Shivaji, Professor Joshi's humbleness, his humaneness. I mean, all of us, we experienced that. And many of my batchmates are on the call too, you know, KV, Irfan, Ashu, when we heard about this, we were all talking about how great he was. Today, we also have Professor Tej S. Verma, one of Professor Joshi's colleagues from Roorkee Physics Department days. Professor Verma. Professor T.S. Verma. We'll try to ping him in if we still have time after this. So with all these tributes, we are going to have Professor Sahu pay his tributes and thanks, and after that we will have the Shanti part and chanting of Om with the final closing of the meeting. Professor Sahu.
Thank you. Like Sanjay already has shown a picture of mathematics and physics department. So I really cannot remember where to start because I was meeting him every day and he was my clerk. You can match the time with his arrival in the building. So every day for years and years, I met him and he was a person, a grounded man, just like Shivaji mentioned, a man who used science to build the nation. Like many of us mentioned, just like Dr. Chaturvedi mentioned, institution builder. And Harpreet Singh Saab mentioned like Dev Banke Aaye. So we really have a feel that we are not going to, miss him. We are going to miss physically, but he will always be around us. I myself relate to Dr. Joshi in having challenges in his early adulthood, which he managed to overcome, as Sanjay mentioned. Dr. Joshi served Roorkee 19 years, supervised numerous scholars, published a lot of papers. Now the point here is that all this is evidenced today through the work of many of his students who are professors, scientists in India and abroad. After 19 years of Roorkee, as you heard that he was a director DGCSIR and his work on condensed matter as well as electron transport in quantum dots and nanotube, and many diverse areas. I mean, he should be remembered for his work towards in different directions. The question is, how should I put his legacy in simple terms? Late Dr. Joshi was and always will be a positive role model for me and for many other young researchers around the world who are now all over the world making the difference. Dr. Joshi laid the R&D playing field by bridging the gap between nations and between national labs and deemed university. So this is how I can precisely mention that he has a bridge builder between national labs and deemed university. As we must note that he transformed his vision to reality by joining academia with industry. Just like Shivaji mentioned, science, use science to make build the nation. As already mentioned about, he was, one of the things was, he was Indian Institute of Science, Education, Research. That was one of the institutions. And just like Dr. Chaturvedi mentioned, he was not only the first board of chairman BOD of IIT Roorkee, but he really instrumental for converting University of Roorkee into IIT Roorkee. I must share with you, during this time around year 2000, I helped organize an IIT Roorkee alumni meeting at Delhi when I was in US. I approached him to be a keynote, and just like other speakers mentioned today, he consented. Not only Jawahar Bhavan, this time he was in New Delhi, he consented, and he lightened the heart and mind of over 120 alumni. So he was always there for you, and you can see the milestones he has of his achievement. Finding a time for alumni was not a, he never showed that is a big deal. It was so simple, available man. I give you an example of his establishing research institutions as ARIA, Bhatt Research Institute Observatory, has already been mentioned about. He was a advisory committee for the Prime Minister of India, advisor to network of 52 labs, the Department of Atomic Energy and Defense. So that way, IITs and other research institutions, and then towards these types of big bodies, he was able to put the idea of science to nation. So that is one of the big takeaway I have. Last not least, Dr. Joshi positivity, his brilliancy, and his true nature to help excel others puts him into a perfect role model, providing more than inspiration to all. Not only we should be appreciative of the painstaking effort which we don't see when we meet him, his efforts but we must translate his vision of giving to future scientists who are in the academia industry pipeline. One way is to plan initiatives and contribute through IIT Roorkee Foundation for IIT Roorkee. Please know that he is gone from our side, but never from our heart. Late Dr. Joshi will continue to inspire future scientists if we do our bit for the betterment of the society. Only then will the world be a better place for everyone to live. Late Dr. Joshi's memory as a reality will always guide us. His soul may rest in peace. God give his family the strength to bear this monumental loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sahu. I request Mr. Neeraj Gupta, 1985 graduate, to guide us through Shanti Path now.
Thank you, Anup. I hope everyone is able to hear me properly. When we lose a loved one, our grief is really unbearable. And in these type of tough times, Bhagavad Gita provides us a guidance and a perspective to understand and take the larger view of the universe, and helps us in understanding the relationship between life and death, and helps us cope with the loss. So I'm going to recite a few verses from Gita chapter 2, which is also called Shank Adhyaya. And in this chapter, Lord Krishna is primarily giving the guidance and the teachings to Arjun, who is very disturbed about the death of his loved ones if he was to move forward and participate in that war. So here are some of those verses which are very relevant in a situation like this, when we lose our very loved ones and we are looking for answers. Nanam chindanti shastrani, nanam dahati pavakaham, na chanam klediyantyapo, na shoshyati maruta. Which roughly translates as, weapons cannot shred the soul, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, and winds cannot dry it. Na jayate mriyate vakadachi, nayam bhutva bhavita na bhayo, ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Which means the soul is neither born, nor does it ever die. The soul is beyond the cycle of life, birth, and death. It is eternal, immortal, and ageless. It is not destroyed with the body. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vyahaya, navani granati naroparani, tatha sharirani vihaya jirna, nyayani sanyati navani dehi. Which is, as a person sheds old and worn out garments and wears a new one, in the similar way, at the time of death, the soul discards its worn out body and takes on a new one, which we call rebirth. So knowing the eternal and the immortal quality of soul, finally, Gita tells us, Jatasya hi dhruvo mridyu dhruvam, janma mritasya cha, tasmad parihar arthana tvam, sochatu mara harsi. Which means that the death is certain for anyone who is born, and rebirth is inevitable for one who has died. Therefore, we should not lament over the inevitable loss of our loved ones. With that, may the soul of Dr. Joshi rest in peace, and we wish the family the strength to cope up with this loss. Now I'll recite the Shanti Path, and please feel free to recite along. Om Dyo Shantariksha Shanti Prithvi Shanti Rapa Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwadeva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarva Shanti Shanti Reva Shanti Sama Shanti Redhi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Back to you.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Mr. Neeraj Gupta. Mr. Manish Saraf will lead the group chanting of Om.
Okay, so we will just close our eyes and chant Om 3 times. Om. Om. Om.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you all. These proceedings will be posted on IITRAANA portal and IIT Roorkee Foundation website. We will share these on our alumni social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. Mr. Sunil Hali, who's with us today, will support coverage through news media. I request Chairman of IITRAANA Board, Mr. Ray Mehra, for a vote of thanks and closing the meeting. Mr. Mehra.
Thank you, Anup. Honorable tributaries, thank you for giving me the opportunity to conclude this remarkable tribute to a great man who leaves an inspiring and exemplary legacy to be revered, a man who knew how to give and gave so much. It is a humbling moment for me and many others. I feel a terrible loss for not having met Dr. Joshi. In these moments of distress and sobriety, we pray for the eternal peace of Honorable Professor Joshi's soul and strength to endure this pain to the family and friends. Professor Joshi, a Padma Shri, a Padma Bhushan, a great teacher, and most of all, an elevated soul, had a big impact on not just IIT Roorkee, but all he came in touch with. He touched many lives to change for the better. We were fortunate today to share some of those and together to pay our humble homage. He will be with us to guide and inspire. To all of you who joined us today to celebrate the life and memories of Professor Joshi, I thank you all on behalf of IIT Roorkee Alumni Association of North America. To Mrs. Joshi, Sanjay, who took time during this difficult period. To Dr. Chaturvedi, Anand Prakash Sahib, Professor Harpreet Singh, Dr. Sahu, and all others who spoke. I thank you all. May God bless all. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you all. Om Shanti.